Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I saw this video of John Oliver talking about the Qatar World Cup. He said many things that were quite hypocritical and I just want to go over them here. Now before we get to the video, please do remember to subscribe, like, share and comment.
Try and make sure a line is drawn here. Because in a few weeks' time, the World Cup will be over. The final whistle will be blown on December 18th in the stadium that Anish built in a city that didn't exist 10 years ago. And FIFA will happily move on. And while they will point to new human rights policies that they've now adopted, we'll see how truly committed to those they really are. Especially given that one of the suitors to host the 2030 World Cup is rumoured to be Saudi Arabia, which also uses the kafala system and has an even worse human rights record than Qatar. Look.
I want to start this video from this clip. Because did you notice what he just did there? And this is why I call this man an hypocrite. When he's talking about FIFA needs to change, he goes to 2030. Why don't you talk about 2026? Where are the next games being held? In United States of America. US, the country that tortures people in Guantanamo Bay, the country that is illegally occupying Iraq, the country that is illegally drone striking Afghanistan, Somalia, Mali, all these different countries, the country that is supporting genocide in Israel, that country, no problem. Sure, let's have FIFA World Cup in US. But soon as the games are in Saudi Arabia or other countries that are not in the West, all of a sudden human rights abuses are an issue. Why don't you talk about the human rights abuses in US? Why don't you talk about the US police killing African Americans just for sports? But that's not an issue when it comes to FIFA World Cup.
And none of this, the working conditions, the oppression of women or gay people, was a deal breaker for FIFA. In fact, Qatar's authoritarian tendencies may actually have been a deal sweetener. Because FIFA has long had a soft spot for autocrats. And I'm not just saying that because they gave the World Cup to Russia in 2018 or went ahead with one in Argentina in 1978 when it was run by a military dictatorship, or even that they held the second World Cup ever in Mussolini's Italy in 1934. They've said it themselves.
Democracy has nothing to do with football. You can play football in an authoritarian country, you can play football in any other country. This is sports. And as the Western people, when it comes to Israel, what do they always tell us? They always tell us, don't mix sports and politics. What happens when you are in Britain, all these Western countries, and you decide to say anything about Israel and you are playing a sport? What happens? They always tell us, do not mix politics and sports. What happened in NBA when they were talking about the Uyghur Muslims and the players were criticizing China? The NBA told the players, do not mix politics and sports. But all of a sudden, when it comes to Russia, when it comes to Qatar, when it comes to Latin American countries, when it comes to African countries, you always want to bring human rights issues and these issues and that issues.
Small signs of which have leaked out this week, like in this moment from a Danish reporter.
Hvordan oplever du forholdene lige nu?
Jamen, vi kan jo vise, hvordan forholdene er lige her, hvis vi drejer kameraet. We are live on Danish television, og der kan I se, nu bliver vi stoppet med at filme, og det er forholdene her. Mister, you invited the whole world to you invited the whole world to come here. Why can't we film? It's a public place. But listen. But you can break the camera. You want to break the camera? Okay, you break the camera. Okay. Yes. So you're threatening us by smashing the camera.
Wow. Just a reminder, he was asked, how would you describe working conditions for journalists in Qatar? And just seconds later, a bunch of golf cart goons showed up to answer that question for him, although...
I'm sorry, but that really makes no sense. The idea that soon as he was asked a question, the police came there, that's absurd. But maybe they were in the wrong place. Maybe they were doing something that they weren't supposed to do. Maybe this Qatari reporter, maybe he has political issues or other criminal activities going on. We do not have any context. We just see a video of an arrogant white reporter in a foreign country talking about, I am a reporter and I have a right. Who gave you that right? With what right are you in a foreign country talking about public places and laws and rights. Now, if I go to America, right, I take my camera, I wear my traditional clothes, I go in front of a police station and I start filming. Do you think the police are just going to wave to me and be like very friendly? Or do you think they will come there and they will tell me the same thing that they told him? There are multiple videos of reporters recording police officers and police officers breaking their cameras from America. So this happens everywhere. And by the way, these police officers, they're not even carrying guns. They didn't threaten him. They didn't stand on his neck. They didn't shoot him multiple times. Nor did they beat him up like the American police do. So the idea that this reporter is mistreated is absurd. If you do not want your cameras to be broken, listen to what the law officers of the country are saying. If you are told, do not film here, then do not film here. All these Western reporters, they have no right in their own country. Look at Julian Assange. Look what happens if you expose US human rights abuses. Their own reporters have absolutely no right in their own country. But they always arrogantly come to our countries expecting us to respect them and give them more rights than their own governments do. No, when you are in Qatar, follow the Qatari law. That's my advice to you, Mr. Reporter.
Truly stunned people, because for reasons that it turns out FIFA were fully aware of, Qatar was a fundamentally unsound choice for a summer soccer tournament.
FIFA conducted its own objective analysis of the various bids, which found that Qatar was an unsuitable place to host the World Cup and a dangerous place to host the World Cup, that the summer temperatures would be a hazard to the health of the players and the fans, that Doha simply didn't have space for the kind of stadium infrastructure that was going to be required.
They would have to build 9 new stadiums, and there wasn't enough room for them in Doha, so they would have to kind of create a whole new city.
Yeah, Qatar wasn't just a surprising choice, it was logically inexplicable. It'd be like if the Westminster Dog Show awarded the Best in Show title to a tortoise. Nothing against that tortoise, but not only should it not have won, it should have been automatically disqualified.
You may think that it was fundamentally unsound, but if you've watched this World Cup, this has to be the greatest World Cup ever held. The way they've organized this sets the bar so high. I do not think we will see as professional games ever again. All the stadiums that they said they would build, they built. Everything that they said they would provide for the football games, they did. And they've held very professional games. So the idea that it was unsound from the beginning, who are you to say it was unsound from the beginning? And why are you hating on Qatar building all this infrastructure? If they have the money to build it, none of your business. They said the same thing about Brazil. Oh, we couldn't have the game in Brazil or in South Africa because they don't have the places to hold them. And then when they build them, they were like, oh, why did they build them? They're wasting money. And then they even make documentaries about the stadiums in Brazil. None of your business. If they want to hold the World Cup and they have an agreement with FIFA that this is what we will provide for the World Cup and we'll make sure that it happens, none of your business. The idea that country, if they don't have infrastructure to a certain level, they cannot take the football World Cup is absurd, because that's the whole point. As soon as you win the game, you know all this revenue is going to come in those time when the game is held. You know you're going to have a lot of publicity, so you are going to start investing. But they are expecting everything to be ready. No. And the reason why they make this an issue, because they want these games to be held in Europe or in America. These people are hating on other countries in the world having anything. They just want these competitions to be every year in Europe, in Europe, in Europe, in America, in Europe, in Europe, in America. We're tired of that nonsense.
According to one estimate, Qatar's government has spent more than $300 billion on infrastructure projects. And look, they can afford that. They have a lot of money thanks to their huge oil and natural gas reserves. What they don't have a lot of, though, is Qataris, because the Qatari nationals only number around 380,000. However, the country has an overall population of nearly 3 million. And that is because 90% of it consists of foreigners and migrant workers. And it's migrant workers who perform most of the manual labour there. And those labourers are the ones who've had to build all the new infrastructure for this tournament, which brings us to one of the major scandals underlying it.
Let me just ask you a question, right? The next games will be in US. Who do you think will build these places? And how do you think US government is going to treat those Mexican and foreign workers? How are they currently being treated? They are paid less than minimum wage. They do not have health care. Many of them are in great debt. They do not have any social security, even though they are paying social security. The idea that issue is how immigrants or refugees or people who come to the country are treated is an issue is absurd. Your own government, they have laws that when refugees come by boats from Calais in France and they try to cross to UK to the other side, if that boat is going down and if you want to help them, there's a law that you will be arrested. The EU and the Italian government has been caught multiple times sinking refugee ships that are coming from Africa. Poland and EU, they're not allowing anyone from the borders, so people are literally currently freezing to death. The idea that you care about immigrants, workers in Qatar is ridiculous. And by the way, yes, this is a huge issue. Me personally, I've made videos about people going from Africa to Middle Eastern countries to work. And I like the fact that, for example, Kenya said that you cannot go to Saudi Arabia, for example, anymore to work. I think that India, Bangladesh, all these African countries, I think we need to do more to protect our workers. But the idea that Mr. John Oliver cares about our workers is ridiculous. How are Indians being treated in UK when they come to work there? How are people who do not have papers treated in UK when they are working? There have been multiple reports of them being literal slaves working in different places because they do not have any rights, and if they go to the government, they're being deported. So the idea that you have somehow better system is absurd. People are freezing to death. Why don't you make a video about these people who are freezing to death? Why don't you make a video of these people who are being sinked, whose boats are being sinked by EU and Italy? Why don't you talk about how Haitians refugees were treated last year in the US border, instead of talking about Qatar? Now, if he wasn't using this as a weapon against Qatar, saying that you cannot hold these games because what you've done, that's what I hate. I agree that what Qatar has done is wrong. I agree that there are human rights abuses, but I just do not agree that this should be used as a reason why Qatar shouldn't hold football games. Because if this is a reason why Qatar shouldn't hold them, then any European country shouldn't hold that either. Nor should US, because they do the same thing to refugees and immigrants. I'm going to leave this video here, and if you like this video, please do remember to subscribe, like, share and comment.